Good evening, everyone. This is Jeff with Scoop Deep Dive Astrology Coaching. It is 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Happy summer. And this live stream is a little early. I switched it. I recently was on vacation, so I didn't have a live stream last week, as you may or may not have noticed. But I was out of the country and had a very interesting, tiring vacation. So we'll wait a few minutes to see if anyone else pops in. Let's see. Welcome. Please ask questions. Anyone that comes in or sees us on the replay, please ask questions, comment, and please help me to make it interactive as much as possible. So I recently came back from the UK, and it was my first visit to Europe, and I visited Scotland and London. Very, very interesting. And what's really interesting is not only was that my first time in London, but so much of the music, so much of my personal favorites in culture and music that I consume is very much British. I like so much British music. I like some American music, but hands down, music from London, the area, Liverpool, Bath, all those areas, 70s, 80s, and 90s music especially. So much of it that I love is from England. So that's interesting. And other than the United States, England is my number 2 country for views on my channel right now. So the US is first and the UK is second. So thank you. And for the last month, it's been India that I've had the most views. So again, I find that very interesting that I happen to just go to the UK and visit. And now I'm back, and the UK is my second most viewed country. So thank you so much for that. I hope everyone is well. Got to get back into the swing of Astroscoop here after a nice break. And the last live stream we did, we talked about Cancer, and it was the summer solstice. So we were at early Cancer, and now we're moving forward. Today is July 5th, 2025, and I'm looking to the west here. Now, of course, it's early here on the eastern coast here. Usually I do it at 8, it's 7, so it's completely light, and we have about another hour and 20 minutes until sunset, and then we'll have a few minutes of that golden hour, which is amazing. So it doesn't get dark till closer to 8:45 or 9. So the longest day of the year, culminating right at the solstice with Cancer, and now we're really cruising into the middle of Cancer and the solid part of the summer, full-on summer. So I hope everyone's well. This is always the point of the summer, right around July 4th weekend, where I always feel like the summer flies from here. It's not so much mid-June, late June, but there's something about once we get through this first week, we're in the middle of Cancer, summer has begun, we've had summer for 2 weeks, and there's something about it that just, for me, psychologically just flies. So see if you notice that in the next week or two. See if you notice how fast time seems to go, or your perception of it. And the summer, depending on where you live, the weather's different, but the summer really is short. And as you get older, the perception, the amount of weekends you have to plan things is very small. And most kids have 7, 8, or 9 weeks off, which seems like a lot, but it really isn't when you start planning things on the weekend. You're planning things on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday, and before you know it, you're looking down the barrel of starting school and people preparing for the fall. But we are in Cancer. We talked about Cancer 1. Now, since I missed a week, I'm a little bit off, but we're going to talk about the second decan of Cancer tonight. And I may or may not do the third decan next week, depending on my workload, but also because the Cancer Leo cusp will be coming and will be entering Leo on the 22nd already. So in just 16, 17 days, we're going to be entering Leo. It's going to be Leo time, which is full on heat, full on summer with more heat going from water to fire. So how is everyone doing? How are you feeling with all the Cancer energy? We have a lot to talk about. And I have a lot of ideas for the fall. So if you have any suggestions at all, please let me know either in the live stream, make a comment in one of my videos, or you can also email me. My email is in the description. You can email any questions, comments, suggestions, what kind of comments, what kind of content you'd like to see in the future. If you want to see more sun sign, moon sign, rising sign, more celebrity profiles, more work on transits, sort of thing. Greetings. Number 1 with the crown. Yes. Yeah, it was really interesting to see London. And for anyone that's been to London or Scotland, again, this is my first time. They're similar but very different. And I went to Scotland first, and of course, it was harder to, whichever country you go to first, you have your jet lag and you're exhausted. So that's going to color your perception of the trip because of your energy level and everything. And that was certainly the case with me in Scotland, because I thought Scotland was beautiful, but it was very tiring, and we only really had 2 days there. So it went super quick. We didn't do much. And then we were on a train to London, and then London's visit was a little longer. And of course, London is absolutely teeming with people. Of course, it was the first week of summer. Could not believe how many people were there. People from all over the world, obviously lots of locals, lots of tourists, but it was incredibly busy, but very, very interesting. And the architecture, the accents, the food, the drinks were amazing. The drinks, wow. In the UK, oh my gosh. And by drinks, I mean mainly non-alcoholic drinks, like spritzers, lemonade, coffee, tea, just everything was such high quality. There's definitely a difference with the UK and American, some mass-produced or franchise type food and drink in America. That's always not very good, or it's just mediocre. It's just okay. So tonight we're going to talk about Cancer 2, the second decan. We're going to talk about the transits. We will talk about the full moon coming up. I'm glad I didn't miss that. So we have the full moon coming up on July 10th in 5 days. Full moon in Capricorn. We had the new moon in Cancer. So we had all that Cancer energy to work out. And then, of course, we'll talk about celebrities and, anything else that comes up. Wait a couple minutes. I see we have a couple people in here. For now, I'm coming back to YouTube because this platform is easier to use, and I'm having less technical difficulties here than I was on the other browser with StreamYard. But I like to use StreamYard because I can show you my screen. Unfortunately, in this setup, I can't show you my screen unless I do some major configuration here. So pros and cons of live streams. So on June 25th to July 2nd was Cancer 1. So I wrote that up there. So that's just when we started Cancer. And the solstice was the 20th into the 21st. So another thing I was thinking about is, I mention this often, is that people will comment on my videos and say they don't always understand the degrees, and it's especially true when they're closer to a cusp. So it's really important to look your true birth date, your natal chart up with the correct time zone. And you can't just pick like any time zone for an area of the country if you know where you're born. You really do need to know the town. Karen says, welcome back. Thank you so much. Number 2. Yeah. Thanks so much. So you really do need to have that, your city, your town, so you can get that exact degree. And I've done my chart over the decades in different systems, and I've put in different things, and it will be slightly, just ever so slightly off and different. So that kind of thing. So it's really, really important for the natal birth chart. I know there's a lot of astrologers that they don't spend much time on birth charts because that seems so old school, and they're just doing more event. Like right now, they're doing more political events and countries feuding and wars and things like that, which are interesting, but there's nothing like the backbone, the basis, elemental basis of astrology with the birth chart. And of course, that can be a birth chart of anything, not just a person. It could be an animal. It can be an event. It can be time you made a decision, or the very first time you met someone, or started a friendship, or something, or accomplished something. You can look at that energy. But we have some. This is the art. This my daughter drew that for me a few weeks ago to start Cancer. This is the moon here, because Cancer is all about the moon. And then this is my this is my art from today. My yellow moon. Since right now I don't have the kids with me, so I did this today, just for just to emphasize how unique Cancer is, as opposed to all the other 11 signs, that there's no other sign that's more ruled by the ebb and flow and the tides that are tied to the moon. And Cancer folks, men and women alike, and it doesn't matter what generation either, will always be tied into their feelings very strongly. And there's always there's much more of a stronger maternal or mother kind of instinct in Cancer people. Again, even men. Obviously, if a man is a father, that could be a paternal protectiveness, but it's more so a nurturing protectiveness, because Cancers instinctively know how sensitive they are and how the world can hurt them, and so that they understand, for the most part, they understand how other people can be hurt and other people's feelings. They can tune into that. So especially the Cancer 1, which is the week of the empath that I talked about, which is all moon. So when we talk about Cancer 2 here, it's the Moonchild. And I mentioned this last year, that when you look at the celebrities, these are celebrities that are very different than the celebrities in the first decan. And that's mainly because Pluto is the co-ruler. So you're dealing with the moon, and then you're in the Scorpio decan, so adding a little bit of a Pluto-Scorpio flavor. And in some systems, some people give it Mercury as well. Give this decan, or these degrees, somewhere between 10 and 20 degrees, a rulership of Mercury as well, which can help Cancers be a little more clever, or a little more cunning, that are born in this period. But so June 25th to July 2nd, that's Cancer 1, and then July 3rd to the 10th, which we're in right now, is Cancer 2. So anytime you're in the second decan of the cycle of a sign. The first decan is kind of the most raw, and it's the most true in a sense. But the middle part is in a fixed decan. So when we were in Gemini, and we were in Gemini 2, well, no, I have got to take that back. It doesn't always work that way depending on where you are in the zodiac. But at least in this case, the Cancer 2 is fixed. And there are some other signs in the second decan where they're co-ruled by a fixed decan. So Cancer 2 takes the sensitivity of Cancer 1, that emotional sensitivity and the antenna that they have, and it makes it more determined. And out of the 4 cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, cardinal signs mark the beginning of the season, and they mark the prana. They mark the pure force. So cardinal signs are forceful, pushy. They are always pushers of some sort, all the Cancer signs. So wherever you have a Cancer, wherever you have a cardinal placement in your chart, no matter what sign it is, it's going to push in some way. It's going to be pushy in some way. And for some charts that don't have a lot of cardinal, and you're around family members or friends that have a lot of cardinal, it will be very apparent to you how pushy, in a sense, with their agenda, opinions, or their actions, of how pushy cardinal signs can be. Now, Cancer is probably the most misunderstood out of the 4 cardinal signs, because Cancer can be unassuming and kind of passive. And off the bat, Cancer doesn't seem very assertive or aggressive. But Cancer will absolutely surprise you. That first decan, Cancers are quiet, but they have very, very strong emotions that are under the current that they need to direct and get control of, because they can very easily have their emotions control their decisions. Cancer 2 adds a little more steadiness and adds more determination, but yet they are still adaptable to other people, especially emotionally. And they're more the adaptable person emotionally, where Gemini is adaptable more mentally. So you take that as we adapt with Gemini, we go into Cancer, and we start to adapt to people emotionally. And this is also true with people that have strong 4th house, planets in the 4th house. Obviously, I'm talking about Cancer rising, and even Cancer on the 10th, on the midheaven, which is your work, career, public. That's very important too. And for people that have Cancer on the 10th, you most likely will have Libra rising. Most likely will have Libra rising, maybe Virgo, but usually it's Libra rising, and then Cancer is on the midheaven. And if you have Cancer rising, you most likely have Aries on the midheaven, and it's Cancer over here, and then Aries at the top. But Cancer is very easy to underestimate, because that the cardinality and the force of Cancer is not always seen. And Cancers are very clever about hiding behind that shell, hiding behind the shell that they have. But and this is not a biased comment, but this is very much what I've observed in doing readings and meeting people, is Cancer women in general, Cancer women, because it plays out so naturally in a woman. The Cancer energy, the Mother Earth energy, plays out more naturally in a woman than it would a man. Cancer women are, because women are generally the forthright caretakers of people and families, it's very much easier to see the Cancer cardinality and sometimes bossiness or even smothering qualities of Cancer. in a family from a female. It's much easier to see that. That's not, even if they're quiet and introverted, they will make their neediness known. And it's very rare that you would have a Cancer woman not really have strong ties to her family. Depend on what the moon's in and her rising, but generally speaking, yeah, it's very, very strong. Now, men that are Cancer in this decan, you have protective instincts, but it might not necessarily be just for family. It could be, but it could be for animals, friends, or themselves. So there is a very strong, the moon, the ebb and flow of the moon and the emotions in Cancer too gets an intense boost with Pluto. And this I mentioned this last year. This period has the stars. It's the Sirius, the dog star. So that's the dog star, and you have Canopus, Wasat, and Propus. So you have that whole constellation of Cancer, which is somewhere between 10 and like 19 degrees of Cancer planets. And the interesting thing about these stars is that there are, as with many of the constellations, there's so many multiple symbols that you can read between the lines of kind of like what it means in terms of mythology and how it got translated to the zodiac. And that's why when I look at the stars and the degrees, that's why you can fine tune a Cancer person born today as being very different than, let's say, someone born on June 22nd or 23rd or 24th, that just started being an early Cancer. Much, much different. And I've known a lot of Cancer people that tend to have a lot of Gemini in their chart. So that is something that happens often. And hold on one second. So I've known a lot of people that are Cancer that have strong Gemini in the chart. So that's kind of interesting because there is that combination of adaptability, but one's emotional and one's mental. And that can be kind of hard for them because the Gemini part basically doesn't want restriction, especially emotional restrictions necessarily. And the Cancer part is usually always seeking that. Even though Cancers can bide their time and kind of go into their own cave, like psychologists will talk about how men go into their cave, but it's not just men, women do it too. But it's also, I think it's also strongly what signs predominate in your chart and that need to, withdraw, isolate, or withdraw to recharge, sort of thing. It's not only because you don't want to be with people, it could be just because you need to recharge. Bear with me one moment. My computer is deciding to do some kind of crazy update that I can't X out of, so it's blocking my it's blocking my screen. Checking for software updates. Okay. Come on. Apologize for this. Should be over in a few seconds. But you really do have to look at the moon. I know I say that often, but it's hugely dominant for a Cancer person because they're ruled by the moon. And in this case, in the second decan, I would also look to Pluto. So I would look to Mars and Pluto and the moon to see how the emotions and the energy is working together in an individual. Now I have one Cancer in my family. She has the moon in Virgo. Now, moon in Virgo is a caring moon sign, but it's not an emotional moon sign. Virgo moons are not particularly emotional, and it's kind of a mixed bag with a Cancer moon in Virgo because there's two caring signs, but one is more dutiful, which is the Virgo moon, And the Cancer obviously thrives more on family and feelings. And then I know another Cancer in my family. She also has a Virgo moon and can be a little sort of non-sentimental in a way. And so she has that Cancer feeling part, but she also has this kind of drier, kind of low-key, not as sentimental kind of part, which is the Virgo moon. So you have to really have to look to the moon for Sun and Cancer individuals. So determined yet adaptable. They're both. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call them stubborn, but they are determined and tenacious, just like the first decan, maybe even more so in this decan because of the Pluto fixed part of it and the influence of the stars. Now, all these stars, when I looked up a lot of famous people that have these degrees, there's a lot of resilience and quiet determination to meet your goals. So these people actually surprised. They could seem kind of goofy or silly. Tom Hanks is one person. O.J. Simpson, tragic life. He has stars near there. Robert Hand, the excellent astrologer who I've mentioned, who's on Instagram and he does reels and videos. He's written some amazing books. Planets in Transit is a really good book from Robert Hand. He has, I believe it's Sirius or Canopus conjunct his Cancer ascendant, which is commanding in a sense. It's a quiet command, and their determination can almost guarantee them success as well because of this. So that's another thing about this quiet, persistent Cancer energy. It's the current. It's that current. Pisces and Scorpio don't quite have the current. It's not the same. The Cancer is the only sign, because it's water and cardinal, that has this quiet, persistent current. And you'll know, if you have any Cancer people in your family, you'll know that when they want their way or they want to protect you or give you something, they don't loosen their grip. And is that a pro or a con? It depends on the situation. It can very much be a con in a lot of situations when situations require, I'm a big believer in, I'm a determined person, but I'm not that determined. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's one of my strengths is because I know when to let go about something. So does that mean that you might give up on a task or a hobby too soon? Yes. And have I done that? Absolutely. But there's a little beautiful thing in life that it's good to stick to what's working for you. But things that are too rough, things should be challenging to merit the reward of a relationship or a friendship or something at work or a goal outside of yourself. There should be challenge there, but it should not be so difficult that you're using all your strengths and constantly hitting walls. There's a point where you have to, like a dog, you have to drop your bone. You just got to drop the bone. And I've met a lot of people that don't know how to do that. It's interesting. So I see that that difference between myself and other people is I kind of know when to drop a bone. So is that a pro or a con? It depends on the situation. But Cancer's tenacity can very much work against them because they don't know when to let go. Their pincers are so locked into family members or friends or even ways of being. Cancer is tied to the family. It's tied to the past, roots, genealogy, DNA. That's all Cancer. So if Cancer doesn't know how to appreciate the past, or romanticizes the past too much, then you're going to have a Cancer person that may not be able to drop the bone when you say, please, okay, enough, we're not playing anymore. You say to the dog, no more, please drop the bone or give it to me. Cancers can, that's a big lesson for Cancer, is to let go of attachment. Now, attachment in itself is fine. We all need some healthy attachments. We can't be, unattached or detached from everyone around us. We have to have meaningful conversations and interactions and relationships with people. But Cancer too can definitely have a strong touch with that. So that could definitely be a lesson, especially with all of these dog. Isn't that funny? I wasn't even thinking of anything when I said drop a bone, and there it is. It's the serious dog stuff. So again, you can't make these things up. Astrology always astounds. But in the Chinese lore, they respected the crab and Cancer as a symbol of a heavenly wolf, which is interesting. I'm not sure if I knew that. I don't think I mentioned that last year. But heavenly wolf, according to Chinese. So all these different Mesopotamia, Egyptian, Chinese, all respected Cancer, mainly with the crab. But of course, there's all these different, like I mentioned last year, the lotus, there's the crab, the lotus, sea creatures in general that move side to side instead of directly. And apparently, the dog star and heavenly wolf for Chinese astrology or Chinese lore. So that's pretty cool. But yes, I mean, Cancer people, Cancer folks, especially born this week, can be just as, determined as their opposite sign Capricorn. We don't always think of Cancer as a determined sign because they can be retiring and quiet and kind of unassuming and even passive. But Cancer, when something touches Cancer, and I don't mean physically, I mean emotionally, psychologically, romantically, or mentally. Someone or something touches Cancer, that's when you see their energy and the strength, and you see that cardinality of them wanting something or wanting to grab something. So that's something that comes out and can be similar. Its determination can be similar to its opposite in 6 months, which would be Capricorn 2, ruled by Saturn. Now, Cancers want more approval. Capricorn doesn't care about approval as much. So that's a big difference too. Again, that neediness, neediness is in the eye of the beholder. It's very hard for all of us to have a proper balance of not being too needy and yet not being too independent. And, I've known a lot of people that have been very much the extremes. People extremely needy, extremely independent, like too independent. So there's definitely there's definitely a level where you can be too detached, and Cancer can teach you to reel it in and don't forget your family, your friends, and your roots and your animals, kind of thing. That's what Cancer would say. So Colin Hay, he's a Cancer singer-songwriter, and I put him in the middle because when I was doing the research, he came up in my mind's eye. He came up, and he's from Men at Work, and he has a Cancer planet that is conjunct the Cannabis star. And then I started looking at other musicians and actors that also had this star, including Mark Wahlberg, Marky Mark, Robert De Niro, of course, the classic actor, Billy Joel, consummate pianist and pop star, and Robert Hand. And all of these people, now here it's the Cancer rising, it's the Crab rising, which includes, so Mark, Robert, Billy, and Robert Hand all have not the sun in Cancer, but they all have Cancer rising that's in this period, which is also very strong. So that's another thing. That's another good technique with astrology. If you have whatever sun sign you are, you have a certain degree and you're born in a certain period. But you may have an ascendant that is actually stronger and more of an influence on you by a hair than your sun sign. And that's where you get into the whole vibe of when people say, guess my sign. And you say, oh, I think you're a Taurus. And they say, no, I have Taurus rising, but I'm an Aries. If you have a weaker or a less you have less of a spotlight on your sun due to aspects or placement, and you have a stronger ascendant, especially that's conjunct certain stars, it will create a very strong vortex of this is how people see. This is how, I mean, we see this part of these actors and musicians first before we see their sun sign. Mark is a Cancer rising, but he's a Gemini. Colin Hay is a Cancer. Robert De Niro is a Leo, Cancer rising. Billy's a Taurus, and Robert is a Sagittarius. But they all have that strong Cancer crab rising conjunct these dog stars. And it can also be very negative because of the relation to the dog. There could be literal problems with bites or accidents, like dogs could give you out of fear. Like a dog that's like a fear biter. So a dog is normally a kind, loving animal, but somehow one little tweak of being treated inappropriately has turned that dog into a fear biter. And then the dog's cornered, and of course the dog has no choice but to retreat and try to lash out at you. But it's very interesting. And the Cancer rising is very, it's super sensitive to the world, but it's strong. It's not weak. So that's something that people that are strongly Cancerian can be a handful because of those strong, turbulent emotions. And they are very much great, warm people to be around when they feel secure. But if they feel insecure, not so great, not so easy. And they can be defensive and critical, especially the Cancer risings too. And all of these people, I don't know about Robert Hand, but all these guys and a lot of others I looked up, including O.J. Simpson, they've had a lot of trouble in their lives. Substance abuse, domestic abuse, violence, questionable ethics and questionable behaviors in life, as far as certain things that they've gotten themselves into hot water. A lot of that. Mark Wahlberg was arrested. Billy Joel, I think he was arrested due to his alcoholism. Robert De Niro has been in some hot water. Obviously, O.J. Simpson. And there's so many others. And Albert Einstein had a Cancer. He had a Cancer dog star as well. So it can be very negative if the person doesn't know how to direct those emotions, and they have to squash some of those emotions so they can get grounded. Not stuff them down to where they don't acknowledge them, but they have to squash a little bit so that they can function and not always have that antennae out for threats, sort of thing. So as I mentioned before, July 3rd to the 10th, that's this week. This is Cancer 2, and they can be very withdrawn. So Cancer 2s, I think I mentioned this early on and probably last year too. Out of the 3 water signs, the easiest way to spot Cancer in a chart is chattiness. Now, I don't mean sociability like air signs. It's different. But if you know anyone with Sun, Moon, or rising in Cancer, you will, or even Mercury in Cancer, you will undoubtedly see a chattiness, especially with those that they feel comfortable with. So in their clan, Cancer is all about clan. That's a pro or a con as well. Cancers can be very clannish. They like their little clique. They like their clan. Maybe that starts in high school or middle school, where the girls have their little clique, and it continues into high school. I'll bet you most Cancer people, most Cancer rising people, and the moons have a very, very small group of people from high school or college that is still their little clan or still their little clique that they feel comfortable with. Now, it may be outdated and it may have expired its usefulness, but they still hold on to it. So again, whether that's a pro or a con, I have a friend from childhood, and he has Cancer rising. And I know, I haven't seen him in a long time, and I don't see him regularly, but I know if I called him and said, hey, I really want to catch up. I really don't know much about your life right now. Can we please do that? I know he would do it. I know I know a Cancer rising person would do that because that's interesting to them. You know, they would be like, oh, this guy or gals from my, you know, from my middle school days or from my high school days, or, you know, just from my neighborhood. So that's very, very, you know, interesting and enticing for Cancer, especially Cancer rising. So yeah, so got to be careful with all the stars there. And fantasy, I put fantasy to use. And what does that mean? Well, Cancers have strong fantasy lives, like Pisces, very similar to Pisces. Pisces is more like on another planet with a fantasy, but Cancers are more like in the here and now with fantasy. So a quiet Cancer person that seems completely normal, they will have something peculiar that they like. Either they like to date or marry someone that's wildly different than them, maybe a different, you know, from a different country, a different race, maybe much younger, much older than them, just wildly different and peculiar. And so there's something a little offbeat and intense about these Cancer people, and they have very, very strong fantasy life. Now, that's where I think some of them get into trouble, especially the males, because if you are starting to act out on certain fantasies that are not acceptable in real life, um, you know, it's going to catch up with you, sort of thing. So Cancer has to be careful of that. So the moon. So obviously the moon is paramount and prime for the sign of Cancer. It always has been, and all the civilizations worship the moon, worship the ebb and flow and the tides. And it's basically a 27 to 28 degree cycle, and it coincides with the female menstrual cycle and all sorts of other things in nature. Primarily, like baby turtles are only hatched during the full moon. That's so cool. So only during the full moon, that peak energy. Um, I'm not sure if that applies to all sea creatures, but I did read that it applies to baby turtles. So that's pretty cool. And as I've mentioned many times, throughout that 27 to 28 day period of the cycle of life, you have the moon changing signs in the cosmic sky every 2 to 2.5 days. So that's can be a good thing, because I've mentioned this many times before, whereas in some days you could feel drained by the moon sign, and then it's gone 2 days later and you're in the next moon sign and you may feel better. So if there are certain times of the month that you feel really tired and you know it's not something specifically physical in you, you could be sensitive to the moon cycles, and you would be wise to look up, go to Astro Theme or AstroSeek, and just look at the current planets and see what the moon signs are. Say, oh my gosh, I kind of noticed that. I love when the moon's in Taurus. I probably mentioned that before. I love when the moon is in Taurus. There's something, it really is very chill for me. It's very like easy. Those 2 days, it's just a smooth transition from the Aries moon and then into the Gemini moon. But you know, it's different for everyone on how it hits with your chart, sort of thing. But the moon has been revered and studied and worshipped, you know, forever, right? The moon is associated with magic, seduction of all kinds, but not just physical seduction, the seduction of beauty and seduction of nature, and the sea, and, you know, uh, travels. Cancer is another sign of like long sea and travel voyages as well. A lot of the stars in Cancer relate to voyages. So Cancer people are homebodies, but yet they love to travel and see other homes. They like to see other home countries, see how the unit operates. So Cancers can be big travel people, even though they like to be in their home. They can like that. So magic, seduction, and casting of spells as well, obviously, is associated with the moon. So the Harry Potter series of books and films by J.K. Rowling, I don't know her chart. I know she's a Leo, I believe. I wonder if she has any major Cancer. But it's very much her stories there relate. Harry Potter's a lot relates to the moon there. There's a lot of wizardry and magic and spells and all that cool stuff. So if you're looking up someone's chart this week, you look at the moon, definitely look at the Pluto, maybe Mars for energy as well, because emotions are energy. So it'd be good to see how someone uses it. And I think I've mentioned this before, but the Mars in Cancer person, the Mars in Cancer person can go one of two ways. It's not a great placement in astrology. It's not well placed. So it can be very gentle and caring and protective, or it can be very temperamental. And the Mars in Cancer person it's generally not that stable. So they're sometimes at the whim of their very, very sensitive to their environment. Also, Pisces Mars too. But Mars in any water sign is going to pick up on their energy is going to pick up on the environment, because that is their energy is water, sort of thing. So I would look at all those, and yeah. Okay, so celebrities. These are celebrities I picked for Cancer. We have Don Dokken. He is a singer. And now I think Don is earlier than the third. I think he's from the first decan, but he still embodies a certain intensity, emotional intensity when he sings. So that's why I put him on here. Vince Clarke is one of the co-founders of the British group Depeche Mode. And as I mentioned, most of my music that I like is British or London area, Bath area, Liverpool kind of thing. Not the Beatles. The Beatles are not my favorite. I think I was too young for that. But a lot of 70s, 80s, and 90s British. Huey Lewis, American singer-songwriter and musician from Huey Lewis and the News, and he did The Power of Love for the Back to the Future series movies, and he had that kind of lantern jaw and that kind of Moony. He has that kind of Moony look. So Cancer, and he had so many hits. Rick Braun is a jazz. I think he plays saxophone. He's also very, very moony and moody in his music. Andy Fletcher is another half of the British group Depeche Mode. So he's passed now for a few years. But Andy, Depeche Mode has very much a moody, watery, otherworldly kind of sound. And a lot of it has to do with these men that formed their formative sound was by Cancer men, and then they entered the other guys, especially Dave Gahan, who's Taurus. But there's a lot of Cancer energy there. 1950, Gwen Guthrie. She is a kind of a lesser-known R&B pop singer, but also very, very moony to me. And her music, there's something about the water signs in music. If you have a good ear for music, you get to hear it before you even know it logically, if that makes any sense. And I can pick out certain things on songs. If I don't, sometimes I know the person's chart off the top of my head when I'm hearing a song in the car. Sometimes I don't, but I can usually tune into the element. And then Jim Kerr, who is from Scotland, which is so cool to think I was in Scotland. He is from a group called Simple Minds, and Simple Minds is huge in Europe. They're one of the biggest bands in Europe. In fact, they're as big as U2. They are like the U2, or Barry Manilow of, Barry Manilow, Tom Jones, all those big people from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. They're that big in Europe. They've had a little success in the States, and they were just in New Jersey and New York. They were on the East Coast a couple weeks ago, I think. I didn't get to see them, unfortunately, but they were in the States. Great music, very, very inspiring. And then Rick Emmett, he's a more obscure singer and musician from a group called Triumph, and they are Canadian. So I think it's rarely that I have Canadians on my list, but I do like some of them. And he's has an amazing emotionality in his rock music. Very, very emotional. A lot of male rock music has energy, but some of it is quite detached, right? It's too mental or it's too detached. A lot of men don't know how to incorporate the more personal element into their songwriting. But this group, maybe it's the Canadian influence, have very good energy, and it's also quite emotional. I think that was it. I had some more, but I could only fit that one to get the moon on there. The moon kind of looks like a banana, but the moon is very, very strong. All right, so let's look at the. I'm going to look at the transits. I'm sorry, I can't show you the chart here. So July 5th, 2025, which is tonight, and I did for 8 p.m. because it's almost 8 p.m. Eastern time. So we have the sun at 14 of Cancer. That's directly in the middle. And of course, we have Jupiter now in Cancer that's moved to 5. So that sun conjuncted Jupiter, and it's now passed, so it won't conjunct it again. And we have the one, we lost Gemini, but then now Venus and Taurus just went into Gemini. We have Venus is at 1 of Gemini, and it's conjunct the 29 degree of Uranus in Taurus, which the most notable thing is Monday, 2 days, Monday in the middle of the morning, Uranus goes into Gemini. So that is a huge shift. So we're going to go from Uranus, Taurus into Gemini, and then that will be very interesting for next year, because next spring it will conjunct all the Gemini planets, all the Gemini transits, especially the sun. So every Gemini person next year is going to get a transiting Uranus kiss. You're going to get Uranus that's going to conjunct your sun at some point during your birth month. So that's going to wake you. That's going to wake you up. That's going to be very interesting. We're going to have that transit. And then Mercury is now in Leo, and that's direct. However, we have Saturn going direct on the 13th. So that will be Saturn at 1 of Aries going backwards. Again, closer to Pisces. That Pisces-Aries cusp of planets have been so long. That's going to go back. And then on the 18th, Mercury in Leo will retrograde. And then it will go direct on August 11th, which isn't very long. So Mercury will be retrograde for about 3 weeks. And then August 11th, it will go direct. And then, of course, I mentioned on the 22nd, we have the solar ingress into Leo, and we'll have Mercury retrograde to Leo, and then Sun will go into Leo. Mars is in Virgo direct. Pluto retrograde at 3 of Aquarius, so it'll take forever. The node in Pisces, and Neptune is retrograde in Aries. And then on the 24th, we'll have the new moon in Leo at 2 degrees, and the 30th, Venus. This is how quick Venus will be in Gemini and how quick it goes into Cancer on the 30th. So it's not even a full, not even really a full month. And then in August, Mars will enter Libra. So Libra will get some Libra energy. And then, like I said, Mercury will be direct on August 11th. But it's really, let me see here, the quotes here. So the Cancer energy right now, the cardinal water energy is incredibly strong right now. And it's the strongest weight of the cosmic chart. And we're quite low on fire. We're very, very low on fire, and we're very low on air. So for the longest time there, we had a lot of air, but right now we're very, very low on air. Yep, the 14th degree is the Sirius star, which is Jupiter and Mars. And then we have the moon in Scorpio tonight, which is conjunct a star called Zubin El-Shmali, which is Jupiter and Mercury. Moon at 18. What's nice about tonight is you have a sun-moon trine you have a sun moon trine in water, and it's almost a grand water trine with the node in Pisces. So that's really, really nice. Sun in Cancer at 14, moon is 18, almost 19 at Scorpio, and then the node at 21 of Pisces. So you have all that energy, but very, very low on the air. And like I mentioned, we go for months and months and months with no Libra transits, which is so interesting. So that always makes me feel like I don't have any planets in Libra, but I wonder, I'd love to get some people in here to give me some Libra feedback, because I don't know any Libra people. I'm trying to think. In my circle, I just can't think of any Libra people at all. Just kind of interesting. It's kind of amazing. I knew some Libra people years ago, but right now I can't think of any. So I'm wondering how people with Libra planets feel when there's no transiting Libra and it's just kind of on the sidelines of a house cusp. But Librans will feel some energy, or Libra planets next month will feel energy or energized when Mars goes into Libra, kind of thing. And then we have Capricorn rising tonight. So a baby born tonight would have Saturn ruling his or her chart, and that would be in Aries, which is almost retrograde. But this Cancer energy is a really good time. It's a good time to connect. Obviously, it sounds so trite. Everyone always talks about Cancer and family, but in a positive way, this is your time to connect with family, but also connect with the earth and all the creatures, because it's such. We have a groundhog family in the corner over here. We have a groundhog family of, I think, 4 that have built a little house underneath in the ground there, and they're just so cute. You can definitely see the mom and the dad, and then the children or babies are incredibly much smaller, so you can see the difference. That they are just so they're just so darn cute. But fortunately, they're away from keep them away. But they're doing their thing. But this is definitely a time to connect with your cats, connect with your dogs, the birds. The moon Cancer it's pure Mother Earth energy and mothering energy. And there's nothing wrong with men having nurturing, those good, positive, nurturing qualities, whether it's nurturing people, nurturing animals, or yourself. Self-nurturing is very important. Men, I think more and more men are becoming more comfortable with that, of different generations, of being more of a balanced person. The template of what a man was. And I think that's particularly tough for Cancer men because Cancer men can seem tough on the outside because of their shell. So they can still act tough. But inside, they could be like jelly, like a jellyfish. They could be super soft and kind of slimy, underneath their shell, and yet still have a very, very strong shell. And that's what Cancer risings have. Cancer risings come off a little gruff, a little tough, but they're really not like that. And they don't really want to be like that. They want to let you in, but they're careful. They're cautious. Should I? And maybe it's possible that they always have their shield up for defense, kind of thing. But that's the thing with water signs in general too. Too much water in a chart is not a good thing, because too many water signs creates isolation and creates a fence or defense or fences. So too much water in a chart creates defenses and secrecy, and then that person may not be able to properly let a friend or an intimate in to get to know them and to develop, a secure, secure kind of relationship kind of thing. Like O.J. Simpson, when he was alive, he had the sun in Cancer, and he had the moon in Pisces, which is ultra sensitive. But yet he was a black man that came from this macho football world where he had to be macho and tough, he had Leo rising, so that's why he was able to kind of use his charisma to kind of con people. But yeah, it's hard. It's definitely hard for Cancer men to consolidate that and balance the male and the female there. But it's very important that everybody try to do that, and especially men. I think that's something that's important for men to do. If more men could do that in the society, we would probably have a lot less conflict, a lot less wars, because people are hiding behind, false pride or whatever, because of just unnecessary defensiveness. It's good to be wary. It's good to be, aware and vigilant of your surroundings. Like when I was traveling, you have to really be, you have to be aware of like who's around you in your space, and that's something wrong with that. That's good, but the Cancer defensiveness can, I think it's hard for Cancer people, moon children, to modulate that depending on what they have for the rest of the chart. Great insights into Cancer. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you so much. Not sure if anyone else came in. I think I saw a couple other people come in. It's too bad. What I wanted to do just for a few minutes before we go, I wanted to look up a chart and share it with you guys on the screen, but obviously I can't do that. Let me see. And also, wherever you have, we all have Cancer in our chart somewhere. Wherever you have Cancer in your chart is going to be where you're going to have the tendency to become the most attached to that area of your life, and possibly to your detriment. So it's definitely going to be a lesson wherever Cancer is. It's going to be a lesson to learn to let go. I'm looking at Billy Joel's chart. Yeah, he has the 15-degree ascendant in Cancer, Moon in Libra, Sun in Taurus. A lot of Venus there. Mercury. So his chart is ruled by Cancer rising, ruled by the Moon in Libra in the 4th house, which is amazing for music. He has this very, very strong moon influence there. And Billy's definitely much more of a lover than fighter. Lots of Taurus though. Yeah, the Taurus and the Cancer rising, quite the defenses. But yeah, anywhere, if you're a Gemini rising, for example, you're most likely going to have Cancer on the 2nd. I have 2 people in my family that have Gemini rising, and then they have Cancer on the 2nd house. So the 2nd house is money and values, personal possessions, and it's the house of mine. It's my house. Whereas the 8th house is the house of others and other people's resources or possessions and how it relates to your relationships with others. But the 2nd house, Cancer on the 2nd house, that person could be attached to certain ways of being, certain value systems. So however they value themselves, or whatever their self-worth is, they would tend to be very sensitive about, because Cancer is on the 2nd. Now, of course, then you would have to look for their moon. Obviously for a Cancer rising person, if they had another Cancer planet, it would either be in the 12th or the 1st, or it could be right on their ascendant, which would be very, very strong as well. But I just want to remind everyone, my live streams, I know I've been changing them around. So For the rest of the summer, they'll most likely be either Fridays or Saturdays, and it could be 7 or 8 or maybe even 9, depending on the week. So please keep in touch. Follow me on X, which is Astro_Scoop. Follow me on Instagram, which is Astroscoop7. My email is astroscoop@zohomail.com. It's in the description. And of course, here on YouTube, Astroscoop3801. So that's how you can keep up. But I will most likely try to decide by Thursday night or Friday mornings whether my live stream is either Friday or Saturday, and then of course what time it is. But I appreciate the patience, and I'm also trying, I'm trying to hit those other time zones. The UK, where I just came back from, they're 5 hours ahead of me. So, it's 1 in the morning there. If someone was watching me, it's 1:06 a.m. in the United Kingdom, and California is 5:06, and then you have people that are an hour behind at 7, and you have some people in the U.S. that are at 6. So I'm just trying to hit different time zones and trying to get different folks in here. And again, if anybody sees this on the replay, if you want me to showcase your chart, if you're willing to, I know we had a woman a few weeks ago, she hasn't gotten back to me, but if you want me to showcase your chart, kind of to give you a little bit of a free, some free insight, and then we can also share that interactively with the group, please let me know. Either drop a comment on the replay or even on one of my current videos. And coming up, I'm not sure if I'll have just a Cancer video, because I'm really covering all of it in the live streams, but I will probably have a Cancer Leo cusp video, which starts in just over 2 weeks. So look for that in the next week or two. I'll probably do a Cancer Leo cusp video as we get closer to celebrating the sign of the lion and lioness. But happy birthday to all Cancer people. Again, we have, let's see, about 16 days. Yep, a little over 2 weeks. But thank you so much for hanging out. And I will see you next week. Have a good week. And don't forget, tune into the moon and look up the moon sign. It's really fascinating. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great week. Stay safe.